You stupid bitch. Yeah, you're a stupid bitch. You stupid bitch.
Welcome to another episode of Stupid Bitches Say What, the Aussie podcast about everything and nothing, but always with wine. Sometimes a little too much wine. This week, we chat about the month that was November so far. Welcome to What's the Haps, Stupid Bitches.
Listen in while Skye talks. Listen in while Skye starts our What's the Haps episode off with 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference. And I discuss Britta's had the long-awaited end to her conservative.
It's a hard word to say. I got stuck on it when I was writing it. I was like, how do you even say this?
Listen in while Skye starts our What's the Haps episode with the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference. And I discuss Britta's hashtag pregnant man and the long-awaited end to her conservatorship. Conservatorship. We also touch on other hot topics this month, including Skimmer, Yellowstone, and what happens to the monarch when the queen dies. Bless her soul. What are you drinking, Skye?
Well, I can't wait to get to your what are you drinking? But now it's all about me right this moment. So I'm drinking a Brian Fletcher Tempranillo. I've drunk Brian Fletcher before, I'm pretty sure, on this podcast. I was actually going through my wines in the fridge, and I have to say, oh my God, you've got one. Shut your face.
I think I just knocked chairs down.
That's not a Tempranillo.
No. I was just trying to grab my bottle.
Oh, is that what you were trying to do? Sorry for people at home who can't see what Bino's trying to do. He did knock 2 chairs down. And a whole bunch of bags by the look of it.
Secret Santa.
So I'm drinking a Tempranillo. After last week's effort, I proved to myself that my poor little healing weak body is not ready for heavy red wines. Certainly not the way I'm used to drinking them. So I'm going to try to only drink half a bottle tonight. Let's see how that goes, shall we?
We'll give it a good shot because I'm already about 7 bottles in.
Yes, well, that's what I'm about to say is, what are you drinking, Sean?
So today is my work Christmas party, and I've been drinking, so it's now 7:48, but I've been drinking since about 9. We had punch at our Secret Santa thingy, but there was also vodka in that punch.
You can already hear the slur in his voice.
Punch. But I did do my best to try and get out there. My aim was to get out at 5 o'clock. I realized.
You told me 4:45, and I said to you, "Are you fucking kidding? You won't be out of there at 4:45."
I realized at about 5:45 that I was late. I was like, fuck, I've got to go. And then I got home, and then I got very frustrated because I couldn't find my shit. Vinny wasn't home because it's also Vinny's Christmas party. I'm like, Vinny, where's my thing? I was sending him abusive text messages. And now he's home.
Poor Vinny. Poor drunk Vinny.
I know. And now he's in the background singing Spice Girls. So if you hear goodbye, my friend, that's Vinny. But anyway,
and I'm not sure our listeners can actually hear that because all I can hear is Vinny. I'm not that drunk. I've only had a couple of sips of wine, people. But all I could really hear was Vinny's drunk screeching. I couldn't hear any lyrics whatsoever. Bless his little heart.
What I am drinking is called Horner.
I have that in my fridge right now. That's the
orange Shiraz.
Oh, see, they've got the Verdelho too, and I had the Verdelho in the fridge, and I didn't want to drink it because I was pretty sure I'd had the Verdelho. And I was like, how are we going to keep track of our drinks so that we make sure we should have started a list so that we don't repeat the same drinks over and over.
Exactly. And I've thought that myself. And I've also had.
I'm surprised you don't have a spreadsheet. You have a spreadsheet for everything else.
I do have a spreadsheet for everything. You're right.
You need to start one. You need to start.
I like to keep shit organized. But today I got my 12 wines of Christmas delivery from Good Pair Days. A big box, an advent calendar of wine.
Thanks for the referral too. They contacted me and were like, "Hey, your good friend Sean wants to know."
Oh, did they?
Want to join Good Pair Days, and I was like, "No, thank you."
But we both get a beach blanket.
I don't need a beach blanket because I'm moving and I'm trying to cull shit. I don't need extra shit in my life right now.
We don't need to go to South Bank Beach with a beach blanket. I'll bring mine. You can share mine.
It's okay. I'll just use a towel. Or one of the other multitudes of beach blankets I already have that I have been packed that will come to Brisbane with me.
What are you drinking, Skye?
We've already done me.
Oh my God. So I was talking to people at my work Christmas
You
party.
cannot cut this out. That has to stay, and I will kill you if you cut that out, because that's hilarious. That just shows the level of drunkenness I'm experiencing, and we're only a couple of minutes in.
I'm so grateful I didn't have to really research anything this week. I just have to make my own little fucking belligerent comments on shit.
I've done a bit of research, actually.
I need you to carry me through this, Skye.
Honey,
I love you for that.
Please, I will carry you through. I would
love
to pay you for
my God. One of my bosses is calling me.
All right, let's get back into it. Where were we? You cannot cut that part about fucking you asking me what are you drinking when we'd already done it.
Oh yeah, I was just about to start listening while Skye starts. So we've already done that, yeah?
We've already done both of what are you drinking parts.
All right.
But it's my turn because you went first last time. So I'm going to start.
Go.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about the Glasgow Summit, aka the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, more commonly referred to as COP26. Look, I'm going to preface what I've researched based on the fact that I feel a little bit more confused about what the situation is than I did when I started researching. And I must say, like I saw on the news when ScoMo was going off, to Glasgow, and there was heaps of people politically up in arms about whether or not we'd made enough changes to our proposal when it came to climate change, and basically everyone was being boo-hooed except for the nationals who were over there going, you can't fucking cut all the coal stuff and blah, 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 blah.
Like the Australian National Party?
Yes, sorry.
Barnaby Joyce.
So basically the news was reporting before he left for Glasgow that it was a fucking schmozzle. We'd made no changes in 5 years to any of our proposals to try to, reverse climate change and make a positive impact. And it's still very unclear. Like, I've been reading a few opinion articles, and I certainly call out to anyone who listens to this podcast. If you know a lot about climate change, particularly Australia's contribution to trying to minimise it, or how we contributed to it, also, I'd love to hear from you, because I feel like I know a little bit more from my research today, but also I'm still very confused, and I feel like the education piece is really lacking. But that's something we do horribly in Australia, the education piece, right? We don't educate enough.
No, and that's actually going to inform my question right now, because, like, I know, like, what climate change is and all that shit and what the summit is, but I have no idea what actually happened. So I need you to tell me.
Okay. So
what happened over in that climate change thing?
We need to try to minimise the ozone emissions that we put out there, right?
Carbon footprint.
Exactly. So what they're trying to say is that they recognise that there's so many things that the whole world, different countries more than others, do in terms of, how we manage fossil fuels and agriculture, like cows especially, like,
methane giving off gases. Yeah.
It's a big one, and there's other things that contribute to that, obviously heaps and heaps of things, but it's
Did I hear correctly that the ozone layer has actually, the hole in it now is actually repaired?
Oh God, I don't know about that. I didn't research that specifically. I don't feel like that couldn't be the case, because why would we be doing all this?
Well, because we've got to make it a progressive thing, yeah.
But basically, they're attributing to all the flash floods and bushfires and all the horrible stuff
Yes.
that happened.
Yeah.
Mother Nature stuff is all based on all these things that we do as countries, and we need to get better, and we need to change that. And this is what this summit's about. It's been going for 26 years, and it was called different things and different. I think it was going longer than 20 years, but in this sort of format, it's been called different things. But it's the 26th one, and there's been other stuff before then. But basically.
And we had all that stuff like when we were kids growing up, where it was all the hairspray and the, what was it, CFCs?
Oh, the aerosols.
Yeah, and all that shit that was actually contributing to the whole.
But I'm going to read a little bit about what I wrote, because then I'll talk about Australia specifically and what I found. But I still feel like I know
more than me right now.
Well, I know what this tiny percentage, and I really want to know more. But I want to know it in an informed way, because you also know that in Australia it's really hard to get accurate information, because there's a lot of misleading, journalists out there. And
100%.
And so it's hard to really know what's what, and particularly when there's a political agenda, which there seems to be so much for, especially in Australia, because we are very steadfast in a lot of our views as a nation. Our political leaders are, at least, in terms of what we're not going to change. When other nations are ready to change some of that. But I'll talk about that in a moment. But basically, so the Glasgow Summit, aka the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, I think I already said that more. I don't want to rehash last week where I just repeated myself over and over due to all the red.
That's Lindy Chamberlain.
Campbell Newman's a wanker. So
that's Julia Gillard.
It was held in Glasgow and happened between the 31st of October and the 13th of November this year, so just recently. It was the 26th conference of the party, which is where the COP26 comes from. It could be called COP26. I'm actually not really sure how people refer to it, but I'm seeing that all over, as well as obviously the Glasgow Summit. It's the first conference since the COP21 that attending parties are expected to make enhanced commitments to migrating climate change to stave off dangerous climate change issues.
Was the last one the one that was held here?
Not sure, but we didn't have one last year because of COVID. I know that.
We had one here like a few years ago, because I remember getting a public holiday for it or something.
Are you not talking about the G20 Summit?
That was the G20 Summit.
Yeah, you're talking about the G20, darling.
Is that anything to do with this or not?
No, that's where all the political leaders come together and talk about everything, like security-wise.
That's when the Russian submarines were coming up around and shit like that, yeah.
Yes. So that's a different thing, but it is a similar summit, and they move it around, I think, for security reasons and blah, blah, blah. Because I was working in the city too, I remember.
Yeah.
And we couldn't have staff, and it was crazy. So the final agreement, of which specifically mentions coal, which is the single biggest contributor to climate change. It's worth noting that previous COP agreements have not mentioned coal, oil, or gas, fossil fuels. References to coal are an intention to phase down the use rather than phase it out, okay?
Right.
So basically coal's one of the bigger ones that's causing heaps of dramas and countries' use of it. So
from the amount they're using, and they need to turn it down.
Correct. So the pledge at the COP26, so the one that's just happened, was the climate summit to end the use of coal power by the 2030s. Or as soon as possible thereafter for the wealthy, and then the 2040s for the developing nations. And it was backed by 5 of the biggest coal users, which is South Korea, Indonesia, Vietnam, Poland, and the Ukraine. Separate group of countries, including the US, Canada, and the UK, pledged to end overseas investment in coal, oil, and gas by the end of the year. So major countries who are contributors to the coal usage, and also the major developed countries, have all turned around and said, look, this is a real issue and we're going to try to do something about it. So the statement that was signed, there was a pledge and they all signed it, wasn't signed by Australia, China, Japan, or India.
Wow.
So I did a quick Google search on Australia's reliance on coal, right? Just because I didn't know enough about it. I know that the National Party, the Australian National Party, was fighting for any change in anything to do with mining. At least that's my interpretation of what was happening in the news before ScoMo went to Glasgow. But when I researched it, I found that generates our usage of coal, among many other things, generates 80% of our electricity.
Oh, so, wow. That's a huge percent.
Yeah. So if we stopped using coal, then
we'd need some other fucking.
However, I'm making that point just because I'm trying to understand why Australia wasn't there. But I feel like if South Korea, Indonesia, Vietnam, Poland, and Ukraine, who are the biggest users, more so than Australia is, can commit to reducing it, then we should be able to find ways to also reduce our coal.
Reduce it. Find other alternatives.
I think we're putting it in the too hard basket, and politically, it's also political. It's crazy.
And we've probably got so much natural resources in that area that we're like, oh, let's dig into it. We're fine.
We do have a lot of natural resources in that area, as well as gas and oil too. So, I get it, but I sort of think, look, the general consensus is that Australia's being fucked about it, internationally and locally. So we really need to do something different. And I think I've got a little bit of a statement here. So at COP 2026, Australia refused to join the 40 nations phasing out coal, instead claiming that we are focused on developing new technologies rather than wiping out industries. And that was the Australia's Reductions Emissions Minister who stated that. So,
which is cool. Like, if you can find new technologies to do shit, that's fine. But don't keep tapping into Earth's natural resources.
You also need to tell us what those new technologies are.
Or what are you talking about?
Develop them and how far away they are from being developed before you sort of say, no, we can't do this. Like, I don't know. I feel like everyone else in the world is starting to come to the conclusion that we really need to focus on this.
Global warming's actually a thing,
Australia's being like the, little annoying child who's like, no, I don't want to do it.
I'm a baby.
Yeah, it's too hard. So it's just, I don't know. But again, like I said at the beginning of me talking about this, I still feel like I don't really understand a lot of it, and I really want to know more, because I felt really inspired after reading a lot of it. I was like, fuck, I need to do more. Like, it took me a little while to get onto the whole recycling thing. That was a big thing. Like, I was a bit slack there, and once I did, I changed. But I think this is the thing. Like, it's
recycling's also
taken. Isn't it?
It's also something, recycling, that's taken about at least 15 years for everyone to actually get on board. It's the whole plastic change thing.
Probably longer.
Even longer. But it's even the single-use plastic thing. Like, it's so great that now all these things are coming in through government that you're not allowed to do the straws and blah, 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 and all that shit. And they're bringing in those new rules now where it's like literally you can't even have a plastic plate anymore.
Yeah, and I guess that is a great example of Australia doing the right thing in those regards, like enforcing that and saying, like, it's a government, it was state by state, wasn't it? It started at the states doing it, wasn't national. Nationally legislated, it was the states taking that on. And I think that you're right, that is a really good example of Australia doing the right thing there. But I think those small changes, whilst they inconvenience people, you get used to it. The plastic bag thing,
100%.
We were like,
it's like the mask.
Yeah, you get used to it. Like, help us as a nation make small changes in our lifestyle that might inconvenience slightly, but
and it's so funny because people who shopped at Aldi were already on board with the whole thing, bring your bags back or buy them again, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't get that at Aldi. And then when they made the whole fucking thing like shopping centre wide, do you remember the whole crisis about it?
Yeah.
Like, then the whole Woolworths started having to give the plastic bags away for free at the beginning just to make sure everyone was on board.
So copping abuse about it.
I know. And like, what was the abuse for? So just bring your bag back, bitch.
And then remember, when COVID first started, you weren't allowed to reuse your bags because the tellers couldn't use them for you. Do you know what I mean? Like, remember you could at first.
Yeah, I had to pack them myself.
Yeah, and so then they were giving away free bags for ages again because they were like, eek, we can't let you use all the old, crappy bags. Like, we're going to have to give new bags and stuff. But, if you still online shop, which I get that it's very hard to
Yes.
find an alternative solution to that, but we were online shopping the whole time
Well, you had to at one
through
point. didn't you?
COVID, and we had to get bags every time because they didn't have an option. I got the paper bags and it was more expensive, but I also felt really shit about having to, you know,
And the
just
thing with the
so
paper
much
bag
paper.
was they were like, oh, you could also get the paper bags, but also the fucking the carbon footprint, whatever you say about what goes into it, making
What's better?
the brown paper bags was worse than getting the plastic ones if you
Exactly.
reused them. Yeah.
Yeah, so
But everyone's now on board with it. Yeah. Well,
absolutely.
most people are.
So I'm just going to touch on two more things really quickly about what happened at the Climate Change Summit. So on November 6th, around 100,000 people joined a march in Glasgow. They started marching in protest, and it was the biggest protest in Glasgow since the 2003 anti-Iraq war marches, and it was really based on the fact that most
Anti-what marches?
The anti-Iraq war.
Oh, Iraq, yeah.
So from 2003, this was the biggest march that's happened in Glasgow since 2003, and it was basically because people still feel that even though they're having this summit, this recent summit, it's still not enough, and countries aren't doing enough. Even though from what I saw, it seems like, I don't think it's a simple solution either. Like, I get that we have to do it for the planet, but as a nation, it's very difficult to turn around and say no more fuel
Agreed. Yeah.
vehicles. You're going to do electric vehicles.
You
no
can't just
coal.
actually just stop it like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
You need
like
to sort of ease people in. This is what's happening. This is what we need to do. And that's why people get more on board with it. Like
yeah. So
when
like, I think if they said to us we can't use coal anymore, like if the United Nations turned around and said you can't fucking use coal, our mobile phones, our houses, like what would we do as an alternative? We don't have a backup plan, which is terrible. We should have a backup plan, but
I wouldn't even know what we use coal for. If they turned around and said you can't use coal anymore, I'd be like, yeah, okay.
Well, 80% of our electricity is coal based, so
Really?
I don't know exactly how the coal becomes the electricity, but it powers it to a point. So 80%.
Wow.
So is that?
See, I
all
wouldn't even know
alive,
that.
or-
I would have thought like the electricity was just generated somehow. I wouldn't have thought it was from coal. I would be surprised. I would have been surprised if I found out that fucking countries were still using coal as their main point of electricity. I'd be like,
I was surprised too, but do you know what?
it sounds like something that you just use for fueling a fire.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't know if you use coal for fueling a fire, do, because that's that black stuff.
Coal. Yeah.
You don't
Like that's
coal.
what they used to use.
Oh, you mean like the barbecue coals? You're talking about the barbecue coals, okay.
And what they did in England and Ireland and stuff like that, you get your little bag of coal to fuel your fire to heat the warm, keep the house warm and all that shit.
But look, in addition to everything, because we love a little bit of celebrity stuff, we love a little bit of pop culture, I just thought I'd make mention before I finish up about the Climate Change Summit in Glasgow. These are the celebrities that attended. So we had Leo DiCaprio, he was there. Stella McCartney. We had Kate and Will, of course. Charles was there.
And what's their platform when they're there? What is their whole thing?
Well, look, Leo and Stella were there. She was about reusable, like repurposing stuff, I think, like recycling, but finding, you know, like she's a clothes designer, so finding materials that
Stella, yeah.
You know,
like hemp material and that type
green
of shit.
stuff. Yeah. Leo was there because he's, you know, massively been a supporter of climate change, and he was there to, I guess, throw around his celebrity status and also try to influence in that way. Kate and Will were there. They participated in a lot of the stuff that was going on. Charles spoke, Will spoke, Bill Gates was there, David Attenborough, of course, was there.
I love that man.
Greta Thunberg was there, that weird little, you know, teenage.
Oh, I love her too. She gets so much shit.
Emma Watson, Ellie Goulding, Idris Elba, who I love, and his misso. They're on a board for the United Nations about underdeveloped countries. So they were there for that. They actually ran a panel. Al Gore was there, obviously. Matt Damon attended a panel virtually from New York about water supply in developing countries.
Matt Damon.
So it was a celebrity-studded event.
Nice.
So yeah, but that's pretty much all I want to say on climate change. But I feel like I just really want to understand it a lot more and educate myself a lot more.
Well, that's the whole thing with climate change. Like, I don't really know the ins and outs of the science about it, but I believe in the fact that climate change is actually a thing.
Absolutely, and if we can do more to save the planet, like I just think even just your rubbish and going to a tip and then
that's what
how they bury it, like it's a horrible idea, like it's awful.
That's what baffles me about the people that are against climate change. Like, it's just a farce. It's just rah. It's like, okay, but we're doing this thing that's actually helping the fucking environment.
Exactly.
And you can see that it's helping it. Like, why would you be against it? I don't get it.
Yeah, let's make it agree to play.
Even if climate change in the end wasn't actually a thing, but we were doing this stuff
a better place.
to make the planet a better place, why would you argue against that? I don't get it. Yeah.
I think it's about convenience, though. I think a lot of these things
and it's also
more than you think about, like disposable nappies. You think of that, but then there's an argument for cloth nappies being what we were saying before about the paper bags. Like ultimately, the water that you use, and the detergents that you use, and the bleach and stuff that you use that goes into the waterways and stuff like that. Ultimately, it's worse than actually the biodegradable.
But we've also gotten to that point where we've sort of established biodegradable nappies into a fact that they're biodegradable now. They're not just this fucking thing that's just in landfill.
I don't know that all of them are. I think some of them still take a while to go. But again, it's another thing that we should be educated on. We should be properly educated on, not just the thing that says we biodegraded this nappy. Well, how many years does it take to biodegrade? Does it take a day? Does it take a year? Or does it take 20 years?
Even if it just biodegrades at some point, as long as it's biodegradable, like you at least feel a bit more happier. Like now, even, do you remember like when we were growing up and there was the whole fucking recyclable paper and trees and all that shit, and people were very afraid to use paper so much because it was such a thing that was utilized. What do you call it? Like trees were getting cut down left, right, and center and shit. And you're like, oh my God, save the trees. Stop using paper. Use recycled toilet paper, the ones with wood chips that cut your asshole.
Yeah.
And people would be using that. And now, obviously, we're at more of a point where we've progressed on paper usages.
We've also reduced our paper use as well because everything's digital now. So most people opt in to get emails as opposed to
that's what's happening.
I hate getting mail. I hate it. I'm just
it's even the same with fucking Woolworths now. I've opted to get electronic receipts.
I love it so much. It's the best thing ever. I'm just like, yeah, I don't want that receipt, and I'm just constantly chucking them out. Or they take up space in my handbag for weeks and weeks.
But you kind of want the receipt just to know that what you've spent. And then I remember the last time when we opted for the electronic receipt, I walked out and then I'd done the whole fucking shop, and I'm like, can I have my receipt, please? And she's like, you've opted for electronic ones. I'm like, you're right, bitch. I have. Goodbye. And then I walked off.
Kmart should do that. They should all do it.
All of them should do it.
I've lost a fucking Kmart receipt and I can't take something back because our air fryer died.
Yes.
We fucking love our air fryer. It was the most amazing thing in the world. And it died still in warranty, but it was the middle of COVID. I couldn't find the receipt. I had the warranty card, but I didn't have the receipt.
Have the receipt, yeah. And now that you have it all stored on your fucking, like you save it into a folder called receipts, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's actually more convenient for us as well. Yeah.
Which they might actually hate because then they must, like, not
tough titties, bitch. And you know how many times I've had to go to him and I said, you've charged me twice for this bottle of fucking juice and I've only got one. Can I get my $3.20 back? And Vinny's like, it's $3.20, babe. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. These are fucking supermarkets that are fucking making millions of dollars, and I'm not letting them charge me twice for a thing of juice.
And do you know how bad they are to their staff, right? So when I worked at Coles, when I first moved down here, just, because I had to I wanted to meet people, really. I didn't need a job. I just wanted to meet people. And
you were loved.
I was shocked.
At it.
I was shocked at Christmas time. They didn't do a Christmas party. So like Virgin, right? Or like any place that I've worked or you've worked, they all, and look, some places are more stingy than other, 100%. But generally, a big, massive company who makes a shit ton of money will at least put on a dinner and a wine and beer bar. Even if they don't put on the drinks, even if they make you pay for your own drinks, they still feed you, have a band, let you get dressed up and whatever at Christmas. Coles don't do that. And I was shocked. I was like, you guys make so much fucking money.
They were yeah.
How can you not put on a Christmas event for your staff to celebrate them as employees? They don't even give them a fucking voucher. They don't
And
even,
especially using the fucking, like, okay, you've not sold all your chickens today, so let's just make all that part of the platter that's the Christmas party.
Yeah, like
The
I
deli
couldn't
food.
believe it. So they have no investment. They pay minimum wage. They're really horrible to deal with in terms of shift swaps and leave and shit like that. They're just really like rigid because mostly they hire people who are uni or high school students and stuff.
Yeah.
Get off your phone.
It's
Yes. Full attention, please. Keep this in.
What?
Do not cut this. Me
Oh,
giving you a little smack for being on your phone. This is
I
my
need
fault.
it.
But yeah, I was very, very, very shocked about that. But yes, I'm with you. If
It's one of those
someone
companies
charges
that you.
something, fuck them. Go back and get your money back, even
Yeah.
if it is 3 days. It's your money.
It's even when you get a gift card for JB Hi-Fi that's like for $50 and you spend $49 and you still got $1 left on the card. I will put $1 and I'll write it on a Nico and put it in my thing and I'll use that towards my next purchase. Finish like it's $1. I'm like, if everybody left their $1 off their $50 gift card, they would be making fucking a.
Well, do you know what EB Games does? They say to you when you've only got a couple of bucks left, they're like, do you want to donate it to charity? This is the charity that we're supporting this month and we'll transfer it over, which I actually think is quite good because you're right. It's annoying to have to carry a dolly card like that.
But you don't want them to have the dollar for free.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. So if you've got the option to donate it because it's more of a hassle for you to carry it around for the next 3 months until you make another purchase. Okay, so your topic now. Off you go. Off your trot. What do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about Baby Cleo.
That's a bit. Yes, yes. Look,
did she go missing at the beginning of the month or around? Like she was still missing by the time November started.
Yes, I feel like it was the last.
That was one of those.
Yeah,
that was one of those fucking.
It's 2 weeks now. Do you reckon? It's been about 2 weeks since she's been
yeah.
found.
Everyone thought she was fucking. It was a Daniel Morecambe situation. She was gone.
I was convinced she was dead. I said, "There's no way they've stolen her." Like, she's in one of those fucking, pedophile rings. Like.
And when they bring that stuff up in the public eye, the first thing they do is fucking top them off and get rid of them.
100%. Like, I just did not. I think it's one case where, out of all the horrible, horrible stories that we've heard of children going missing, the ones that don't get found, it's really fortunate that she was found.
The whole country's fucking.
Look, I was trying to
amazed.
prepare for it today because it's so bizarre, and this is the same thing with the William Tyrrell thing. And I know we agreed we were going to try William Tyrrell. We were going to touch on this at the same time because it's quite relevant. It's given, I think it's given police, a chance to revisit. I'm sure that they were always trying to find him. I'm sure there's always been someone
with William
to some level.
Of course. There's always some shit that's happening in the background. So I know with Daniel Morecambe, when all that stuff, obviously no one knew what happened with Daniel Morecambe. He was waiting for the bus. A bus went past him that didn't pick him up. By the time the next bus came through, a few minutes later, he was gone. They had a whole fucking police force in a, what do you call it, like undercover sting thing that was going on. So like the guy that actually gave the information.
He was a suspect for a long time. They had suspected him from the beginning.
Yeah, but they had to go into this whole ring with it where the cops were doing like fucking armed robberies and shit like that. But it wasn't like the people who were getting robbed didn't know that there was an undercover sting. And they had to sort of say to this dude, this is what we've done. Like, we're doing all this shit. You need to tell us something bad about you before we'll let you in the gang, basically.
Yeah.
And that's when he came out with the Daniel Morecambe stuff, that when he was buried in.
Are you dead set? Is that really how they found?
Yeah, 100%. So there was cops that were fucking, like, doing all this fucking illegal shit and actually busting up fucking banks. I don't know if it was banks, but like armed robbery shit. And they
Oh,
got that guy on board, and they were like, okay, so you know about the shit we're doing. You need to tell us something about what you're doing. It was like, oh, P.S. about Daniel Morecambe. And because he was buried in the Glasshouse Mountains area, do
I
you remember?
know. I was so awful. They
And that's how they
murdered
found
his
him out.
brother.
And
Oh,
yeah, his twin brother and everything,
just
yeah.
gives me shivers.
But then they're talking about with William Tyrrell, it's not even like, because everyone thought William Tyrrell had basically ended up in the same situation.
Yeah,
He'd been kidnapped, he'd been fucking put into some pedophile horrible thing. But
yeah.
now they're saying that William Tyrrell's death was he'd fallen over the balcony as an accident.
Whatever evidence they have, and look, I know that they can't tell you what they've got, and this is sometimes where the media are so at fault because they need to back off, and I understand the public's need to know what's happening.
Want to know, yeah.
When a child is missing, it's so it makes it, especially as parents, like it kills, and even people who aren't parents, it's such a horrible thing to come to terms with.
Yeah.
So I get that
No one
everyone
wants it
to
to be
know
happening in the
what's
community.
happening, and the
Yeah.
journalists feel that they have a responsibility to that. But I think sometimes they get too involved and they push it so much that it's it's not helpful. And with William, so what's happening at the moment is they've gone back to the house, which is the foster parents' house. The foster mother,
The foster grandmother's house. Yeah.
yes, but sorry, you're right. But the foster mother is a wealthy professional from Sydney. I was reading about it this week because I haven't actually really read a lot about the Williams stuff since, just because
But when
I
it
hate
happened,
being disappointed. Do you know what I mean? Like I get my
Yeah.
hopes up that they're gonna. This
And-
is the time they're gonna find out what happened to him, and if they don't find out what happened to him, it's gonna really break my heart again.
and when it happened, it was more like a kidnapping, and it was more like a Daniel Morecambe situation or a fucking Madeleine McCann situation.
Yes.
So everyone thought that this is what had happened. Everyone wanted to know what it was, what had gone down. Everyone wanted to catch the fuckers that had done it.
Yeah.
But like now, yeah, they're saying that he'd fucking fallen off a balcony.
But see, so what happened was that the main investigator who took over, so the first investigator in the William Tyrrell thing, William Tyrrell, he retired, and then the other investigator took over, and he managed the case for about 4 years, I think, and then he was discharged for misconduct, and the misconduct was, and you were talking about what happened in the Daniel Morecambe case and what police had to do to get the real story and actually convict someone. He was done for bugging people related to the relatives, and he was unlawfully recording people, and that's why he got discharged for misconduct. But I could understand if I was a police officer or a detective, I think that you would compromise your integrity sometimes if you were on a hunch and you were really good at your job, and you believed you were onto something, especially when a child's missing. I feel like you could compromise that. Do you know what I mean?
You would totally want to do it. Yeah.
If you strongly believed if a child's life was at stake, if you strongly believed you would get a positive outcome, you would compromise.
Because if the outcome was the positive outcome and did it, you'd be a hero. Yeah.
But so the foster family are talking about, they've been open, their computers have been taken from the get-go, were called in at random stages at any time of the night separately, any family member were taken in the beginning days. Like, they have never once pushed back about anything. Their claims, don't know how valid that is.
And I was going to say, like, and you would totally agree with that. Like, if I would be, as a member of the public, I'd be supportive of the fact that they would compromise or take their computers and all that shit. You'd want to know.
Look, so it seems like they've reopened the investigation because they believe he died on the premises, which means a family member or someone who knew the family was involved. But,
and that's what I said to Vinny. Like if he did fall off the balcony and it was an accidental death, why would you cover it? I didn't get why would you hide it. And Vinny goes, well, maybe they were fucking like walloping the shit out of him when it happened, and he was running away from him and ran off the deck.
And they were a foster family too, so they could have thought that maybe there would be claims that they had done. But I don't know. Look, I was reading a lot about it, and she goes to have a cup of tea with the grandmother, and then she turns around a couple of minutes and he's gone, and it seems like it's like a remote house, and that doesn't sit right with me. However, I don't feel that they're involved. I feel like it's something much more horrible. But then I thought that the same with Cleo, and look, she got found and she was unharmed
thank
anyway.
God.
So,
I thought she fell down a blowhole.
I don't know. But how does a child go missing without a trace? Do you know what I mean? Like, how is there
this is the whole thing about the baby Cleo thing. Like, and I don't know so much about it, and I tried to read up and find out more facts about how they knew about where she was and shit. But like, what the mother said was she woke up at 1 o'clock or 1:30 in the morning, asked for some water, and the tent was one of those tents where they've got the main capsule, entry, and another room attached. And then she went back to the thing, and they said, when she'd gone missing, the tent was lifted, or it was lifted to a height.
And her sleeping bag was also gone. So the child would have had to have. So obviously the child, unless he sat there and called to the child and said, bring your sleeping bag with you, darling, he would have had to physically get it. And this is the part that I didn't sit well with me at the beginning, because when you're a parent, you never really sleep properly. You never have a deep sleep, right? When you've got toddlers,
you're always on alert.
And I think about my dad. Like, my dad now, if I walk into his bedroom, he's awake. As soon as I go in there, do you know what I mean? He's still got that sixth sense when I'm in my 40s, do you know what I mean? If I enter the room.
And this is going to sound stupid, but it's the same even with the cats. Like, so we go to sleep, as soon as the cat's meow, the cat's around, you're like, okay, come here, and you tap the bed to get the cat up there. I know that's stupid, but it's the same sort of thing, that you're alert to the fact that there's somebody else that's dependent on you.
Yeah, and not to be an asshole, because I'm a massive drinker, and there's certainly times I've drunk too much when my child was quite young, but I reckon they were on the piss. I reckon they were maggot.
And that's what happens when you go camping.
And that's why they didn't know what happened. And that's why.
But there was also apparently. Yeah, and there's also apparently like 100 people at the camping ground. It wasn't like they were camping in the middle of nowhere. It was actually an established camping area. There was 100 people there.
It was quite desolate, though. I thought it was quite desolate, the area. But yes, I do believe there's other people there. But to answer your question, basically what happened was they looked at every piece of, I think WA did an unbelievable job. I think they absolutely put every man and his dog onto it. I think they never, we were talking about the Sharon Phillips when we did the true crime. And we talked about all those leads that were
where they fucked up. Yeah.
And it was a different time. Granted, it was a different time. And a child is a bit different to a missing woman. It's horrible to say that, but missing women, sometimes the perception is that they've gone off on their own accord, or they've made choices that have, resulted in their whatever's happened to them.
And they also know that when a child goes missing, that the public are going to be
never rest.
Hounds. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think, but ultimately, I think they went above and beyond. They had every single copper on it, and they were going through garbage for like 10 or 60
I saw that too. Yeah, for like 100 kilometers on the way, they were going through the garbage. But and I've looked at what how do you say it? Carnarvon. And when you look at like what Carnarvon is in the terms of established fucking suburbs or whatever. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's fucking little houses that are shacks and all that shit. Yeah.
It's a small town. It had a very low population compared to bigger suburbs. So look, you're right. It could have been pure luck, and they had a much smaller area, whilst they had a much larger area to search when she first went missing, to make sure she hadn't, fallen or
actually gone down a blowhole.
Fell down a hill or something like that, a cliff or whatever. It was small, so maybe that was working in their favour. But look, at the end of the day, they've got to be commended. They fucking found her.
Oh, 100%.
But poor little William, I just hope that we just find out. Like, I think it's horrible not to know, and I think everyone
100%
in Australia is like, where the fuck is this little boy? Just tell us, is he okay or is he not? And if he's not, let's just put him to rest. Let's just put him to rest.
And people actually be more happier in the sense to know that if he fell off a balcony and that's how he died. And
it was accidental. He could have climbed high, and he could have fallen, and they could have been something that they couldn't have stopped.
Yeah.
And, like, if that's...
It's just weird why they would have covered that up. That's what the bizarre thing is, yeah.
But they found a bit of fabric today, I think. Mm. But again, I find
it
hard to get I don't want to get my hopes up. Like, Like, I just think I can't watch a lot of it because then I just get hopeful, like, oh, I hope we find out what happened to him. I hope we can finally say he's or that. But, you know, so, but I think they're trying their best.
And that's what the great thing is. I've noticed, like, so there's so many overseas cases, Madeleine McCann and all that shit, where this shit just goes fucking AWOL and wonks and shit like that. And it's nice to know that within Australia, as terrible as it was with Daniel Morecambe, they've actually solved the Daniel Morecambe side of things. They've got the Cleo fucking factor sorted, and hopefully we'll actually be able to put an end to the William Tyrrell thing as well.
But the same thing with Daniel Morecambe. People never gave up on Daniel Morecambe. Like, everyone was just hoping that we'd find him. He'd just show up somewhere and he'd be okay. And that what happened to him is just, terrible. We talked about it before. People need to, sometimes the death penalty is not even enough.
Have you ever had a situation when you were younger where you were asked to get into a car or anything like that?
No, look, I don't think so. And, you know, my dad was quite a scary man too back in those. He still is. And look, my parents weren't helicopter parents. It was a different time back then. But
completely. Yeah.
Yeah, no, look, that's never happened to me. But I guess, you know, and this is what they say, child abduction. This is one of the things that parents lose sleep over sometimes, but it's very rare.
And it's also opportunist.
Yeah, of course.
So I remember when I was in grade 7, my parents were separated. My dad was a cleaner. So he used to start work at like 4 o'clock in the morning and shit like that. He'd call me up at 6 o'clock or 6:30, whatever time it was, to wake me up and get me, talk to him, and then start getting ready for school and shit.
God, Link would never wake up if I rang him from work. I need to physically shake him and turn the lights on and put the music on.
No, I used to get the phone call, get up, and then I'd talk to Dad, and we'd do like, love you,
such a good child, such a good teen.
Well, the phone rang, and like, you know, do you remember though, like, now that we're all on mobiles and shit, and you can screen your calls, but whenever the landline rang, you answered it. And like, you ran and answered
through the house, and it throbbed. It was like
the
loudest sound.
You always answered it, no matter what time of day, no matter what time at night, whatever. You just always answer the line like, hello. And then hang up and you're like, oh, fuckers.
Unless you're one of those people who answered, hello, Collet residence.
Or
hello.
You'd repeat the number, 382442974.
Oh my God, so many people used to do that. Was a Queenslander thing.
Yes. And a really nerd thing too. You'd be like, hey, bitch, can I just talk to fucking whatever? It always be about that, 382447654. This is Jody. Hi, Jody. Can I speak to fucking Matt? Thanks.
Or it'd be, this is Jody Smith.
This is Jody Smith.
You've reached the Smith residence.
It's reached the Smith residence, yeah. So I remember, like, Dad used to do that, and I used to get my bus money. And I realised at one stage, so I lived in Capalaba, and I used to go to Birkdale South, and I realised at one point I could actually use my bus money to buy lollies if I walked to school, and the school walk used to be like 45 minutes. It was a hike.
You're thrifty. You've always been thrifty. You're
I always wanted my lollies. And I remember there was one day when I'd done that thing and I was walking to fucking school in grade 7, and this panel van pulled up and the guy said to me, hey, mate, do you want a lift? And I was like, yeah, no, thanks. I'm okay. And it was 100%. And it was around that time.
You with your little cute blonde hair, your little white blonde child, you would have been like the pick of the bunch.
I was the pick of the bunch. And I was walking along the thing, and like I remember the panel van pulling up and me just going like, no, knowing it was not a right thing to get into the fucking car. And I was like, no, I'm okay. It could have been a
good Samaritan. Actually, saying that, I remember, do you know Macmillan? Do you remember where my parents lived in Montgomery Park?
Yes.
Behind Alex's pub. Do you remember that motherfucking hill that went up to Allenby Road? So I used to have to walk up that road to catch the bus. There was no bus stops down the bottom. It was the only bus stop was at the top of that street. So I used to have to walk up there. And it was a killer. Me and my sister would get halfway and we'd be dying, man. It was the worst hill ever. And I remember one time a lady stopped and asked me if I needed a lift. But she had a baby in the back. And I was like, yeah, sure.
That's the clinch. I only got in.
But I was about 17. Yeah, I was about 16, 17.
Oh, if you're 16, 17, that's if you got a bit more fucking, they're not going to.
I was like, okay, sure.
Well, this guy pulled over.
I don't walk any further. I'll go to school with you.
This guy pulled over and asked me for a lift. I was like, no, I'm okay. And I kept walking, and I was still I was probably only halfway there. I was like, no, that's fine. And I remember at school them saying about the fact that there was a panel van going around trying to pick up school kids, and to be on alert. And if anyone sees anything, make sure they tell people. And I was too scared to say that I'd actually had that happen to me because I didn't want my dad to know that I would.
You were keeping the money
and spending it on lollies. And I walked over, and now I think back to it, and I'm like, holy shit. That was actually.
Well, do you know what Jodie used to do? So when we were younger, her mum used to give her $2 a day, right? Every day for tuck shop, right? She used to save it and not eat or make her own lunch. And then at the end of the week, she'd have $10. Back then, $10
was a lot.
On a Friday night, it was enough to go in for a cask of goon with 1 or 2 people and also
pack of cigarettes.
Yeah. $10 could take if you did it for 2 weeks.
I'd take it even further. Yeah. So Adele's album came out today.
Yes.
I listened to it as soon as we got up. I had it downloaded on my Apple Music.
Yes.
It's not that great.
Yeah, right. Well, see, I told you that I read this article because I haven't seen the Oprah interview, but basically it was a massive journalist in the UK saying that she listened to it and she was like, I hate Adele now because she mostly talked about her divorce and, you know, how rich she is, and I haven't seen it, so I can't really comment.
I will totally watch the Adele special and I'll love it and I'll be like, oh my God, Adele, rah. But that's what I found about Adele's albums. Like, she's always got some fucking banger tunes and all that shit. You love Adele, but like the whole album, it's not like a fucking
yes.
Fleetwood Mac. It's not like Fleetwood Mac Rumors, where every song you'll be like, yes.
Or Kate Bush album.
Oh my God, Skye.
I knew it was amazing. Best. But you know, the major song that's on there is this. It is not on there. Is This Woman's Work. So This Woman's Work is the and it talks about the fact that they're the ones who birth children. I can't think of the rest of it now. But it's in Handmaid's Tale. We have to do Handmaid's Tale.
Oh no, you're doing Handmaid's Tale for pop culture, and I'm going to do Kate Bush that same week.
Okay, let's do it. That's a great idea. It's amazing. As Cloud Busting is my favorite song.
Oh, I love Cloud Busting now.
Told you, it's amazing. Did you look up the wiki like I told you?
What the father was trying to make a whole fucking
and the
cloud
yo-yo. Thing. The yo-yo is like, that's actually what happened. Like in the story.
Oh, the yo-yo.
You know how it says it's like when she sings in the Cloud Busting, it's like a yo-yo.
Yes.
So, yeah, like the dad, and they got taken away by the politics in South Africa.
Yeah. And then he ran back up there and fucking, it meant to have happened.
It's such an amazing song.
I keep playing to Vinny, Wuthering Heights.
I love Wuthering Heights, but okay, so it goes Cloud Busting and This Woman's Work is my 1-2 favorite Kate Bush. And that's the line where, you know, when they're on the
platform to get hung.
Yes, and then they trick them. No. Cloud Busting's when she kills the guy from SUV.
Right.
With the high heel.
Christopher Maloney.
Yes, then all the Marthas come in and put him in the
what's the song?
So let's talk about the Queen. She's been a little bit ill lately. And,
poor Lizzie. She's had a fucking long run.
She's a bit old. Let me just find out how old she is. Because I was researching. I should have written it down how old she is. Look, I fucking love her. I've always thought she was pretty cool. I think she's a bit badass.
I don't understand, like, when people who are pro-republic,
so like if we became a republic and had a president, we would have to release it. I think maybe I don't know if abdicate's the right word, because abdicate's when you
we'd just have our own leaders and like she wouldn't be part of it. And I don't understand. I don't think
she's really that big a part of what we do anyway. I just, we are.
When we had the referendum fucking 20 odd years ago to become a Republican,
she's 95.
Well, when we had the referendum, she had said like she wasn't like for us going for it or for it against us going for it. She was like, whatever you want to do, that's the decision. And obviously we all voted to not have it. I still I don't understand what would be the major difference if we did do it. And I quite like having the monarchy
Look,
as
if
part of
we
ours.
did, we'd have a president. We'd be like America. So the president would rule the thing.
I know,
Know.
but I don't know what the difference would be. Like, I don't see how that would benefit us or not benefit us. And so I'm
We
just
are
like, I'm happy as it
still
is.
governed in some ways
Yeah.
by the UK.
Yeah.
That's basically
And that's
some
why
of
we
the
have.
UK principles. But I agree. I don't know exactly what UK principles.
What would the difference would be? Yeah.
Exactly.
Like we've got a governor and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know like when it was back when Gough Whitlam got fucking
He
torn
could have
down
been
by the
president.
governor.
He could have been president.
Well,
He
when
could
he
have
got
fucking saved this
and he
nation.
got torn down by the governor general.
Yeah.
The governor general actually made that whole fucking statement like, no, you're out, basically. And
Yeah,
that's what his
changed.
thing was. God save the Queen because nothing can save the governor general. That was his thing when he got fucking outed. And Gough
fucking
Whitlam
love
did
him.
so much. Free university,
In such a small
free
amount of
healthcare.
time, in such a
He
short
also put in that
time,
whole thing with
killed it. Medicare.
with Indigenous.
You know, it was called Medibank first. It was actually
That
called
sounds.
Medibank.
I remember Medibank.
And
I
then
remember
they
that.
called, after he was pushed out, they called it Medicare, but he started it.
And free fucking university education, free tertiary education.
Which sets us apart from a lot of countries in the rest of the world.
People shouldn't have to pay for fucking
No.
their tertiary
Look at
education.
America. Look at what they will do
Terrible.
to get a scholarship.
Terrible. Yeah.
Or like how much it ruins their lives. But then also look at the fact when they have a university degree, they still end up waiting tables. Because...
And they're also paying off their university degree fucking 20 years into the fucking future. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he also did the thing with it was oh my god,
the wealth
I can't remember
disparity in the US. It's insane.
Exactly, but he also gave Indigenous people their land back. It was Edmund Monroe or whatever it was.
Was it Marbo? Was he the one who started Marbo?
Yes, yeah. And that whole song from Little Things, Big Things Grow is based on that whole thing from Little Things, Big Things. What a fucking legend. What a fucking legend.
We have yet to have any, and do you know what? I have to say, and I know people will totally kill me for this, Kevin Rudd was one of the prime ministers that I honestly think was trying to fucking give a fuck and actually did some good things, but everyone hated his guts because they thought he was too robotic-like and But
no, he was a good one. Yeah. And
he wasn't Gough. He wasn't Gough Whitlam.
He also wasn't Bob Hawke.
No.
Okay. Yeah. But there was that campaign, and this is massive, and I will show you the original fucking film clip of this. So when
I know what you're gonna say.
It's time. It's time. Yeah. So and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, people, but I think this is when Gough Whitlam came into power, when they had the whole thing about the Liberal Party or whatever it was the one that was in power for year and year and year and year after year. And they had the whole campaign. It's time to begin. Yes, it's time. Time for caring. Time for sharing. And they had all the fucking TV stars doing it.
Yes.
My mum was pushing Stuart's stroller around because my mum obviously was very heavily involved in the Labour Party with its time balloons and shit like that off his stroller while she was pushing it. So it was 72. Yeah, that's the type of politics that you want to be involved in. Like now it's like, okay, so we've got Anthony Albanese. I prefer him over fucking ScoMo, but like it's still the same fucking Where's the passion? You don't get the passion.
They're so weak. The Labour Party are so weak-willed. And this is the thing. It's been so... Bill Shorten.
But I mean, he was amazing because his race, his claim to fame was when the minor thing happened.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was very good because it was in the unions and stuff like that. But again, it just wasn't like there was no passion.
You can't manage this country. You can't be, you just can't do it. Like it's just insane. It's like I wanna be on Labor's side, and I am. I've always been a Labor supporter, but their piss weak agendas mean that it's so hard to be able
to fight, to
take a side,
to rally for it. Yeah. I agree.
And then we talk about it. We're always like, let's fucking go into politics. We'll change it up. We'll have, policies that mean something, and we'll talk about human rights, and we'll talk about education and all the good stuff. But I think it's
But
way
the
more
internal
complicated
politics,
than either of us could ever do.
well,
But we
but
need
the
someone.
internal politics of each political party fucking silences you.
It's
Can't do,
100%.
yeah,
It's
it's
just,
fucked. That's why my values align with the Greens, but also with Labor.
But then we also have to recognise that we have a public health system, we have a social system and an NDIS funded system that help people with disabilities. Other countries don't have that. The US doesn't. If you've got a disability, mate, if you're in a domestic violence situation, you're fucked. If you've got mental health problems, you're fucked.
If you stack it on a ski slope, you're fucked.
You don't have shit. If you're here and you have mental health problems, you can go, you can get money, you can get support, you can get counselling. If you are...
One of the major things that I'd noticed that with, so when Vinny and I went over to Queenstown for a friend's wedding, and we got shit-faced, rah-rah. I left the wedding that night, went home, got pizza. Vinny decided he wanted to stay and fucking party with everyone. And then he came out the front and fucking did his Irish dancing in shoes that had no tread. The shoe flipped up. He went back down onto his head. And then I was getting calls saying like, oh, Vinny's had an accident, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, what the fuck? And I was in the room, and then Vinny came home. And then the next morning I was looking at him. He was bleeding out his ear. I'm like, babe, this is actually not good. So we had to go to the GP clinic. We sat there for fucking hours. Then we had to go to a fucking hospital in fucking Queenstown. And then he had to get an ambulance from there to the fucking nearest hospital to get fucking a whole fucking CT scan and all that shit because he was bleeding out his fucking ear. When we got back, we didn't pay a fucking cent.
Yeah.
Their
and so that wasn't from
system,
that wasn't for your holiday insurance. That was
we had holiday insurance, and I'd said to them, maybe we need to hire a car because it's going to be cheaper than him getting an ambulance out there. But we didn't have to pay anything, even through our holiday insurance. We didn't have to make claims. The only thing we claimed was the stuff that he had to get, like eardrops or fucking whatever it was, like some sort of medical thing that was $100, and we were able to claim that, and that was no problem. But him going to the hospitals, staying overnight, he had to stay overnight. I had to leave, and he was in there overnight, and then had to get the ambulance.
Even though he wasn't a resident at that time.
Knocks a cent. Yeah.
Well, see, do you know what the difference is here? That so Queensland has had the ambulance fund for residents for so many years. Well, it's been nearly 10 years, I think. Maybe.
Yeah.
I feel like it's about 10, give or take a year or two. So where it's on your electricity. So you pay the ambulance levy, and that means ambulance.
Yes, it went onto your bill. That's right. I remember when that happened.
So in New South Wales, if Link gets an ambulance, it's free. But if I call an ambulance, so in all my health issues that I've had this year, if I ever called an ambulance from this house, it's going to cost me $500 a pop. Like, I have to pay $500 for an ambulance to come and pick me up. It was
probably about 20 years ago when it came into Queensland, when you had to put it into the electricity bill, because I remember that happening.
Do you reckon it was? No, I don't think it's 20.
Yeah, definitely. Yep, I remember I was living with Kylie and all that shit, yeah.
Well, and we've tried to get it in, because they're trying to get it into the council rates. That's what exact same thing they tried to do in Brisbane. They tried to put it into the council rates. I remember that. And they said, well, that's not fair because it's just homeowners paying for it.
Yeah.
Why not put it into the electricity, because you're touching a wider range of people. Everyone pretty much who lives in a dwelling is paying electricity. That's the fairer way, which I fucking think is totally agreeable.
Not people owning two houses. Yeah.
When I moved down here,
paying for it.
They were trying to put it onto council rates. So I'm just going to go Queensland. But yeah, so what you were saying is so relevant. Like, Australia can be so New South Wales can be amazing in so many ways. But New South Wales Health, which is run by fucking Brad Hazard, who I fucking hate, and I don't care if this ever gets publicised and people say Skye Collett hates Brad Hazard, because I think he should be sacked.
I hate him too, so it's fine.
I hate his guts. I think he's the worst of the worst, because I've experienced New South Wales Health at its worst, and I think he speaks like a shithead, and I've experienced the shit that he has you know, he's
Delivered.
responsible for.
Yeah.
And he's a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
But I'm going to just try to find out when it came in. But how did we get onto that topic?
I have no idea.
I
think it was
we're
about
talking
American
about the Monarch.
House.
We were talking about Golf Whitlam.
Oh yes, yeah, and how he brought in Medibank. Well, it's fine.
So we haven't. Okay, so we were talking about the Queen, and we were talking
Yeah.
about the fact that she's been ill lately, which she's 95, which is fucking insane. She's super old.
She's also been a fucking round. She had her silver
boss.
jubilee. She had her silver jubilee when I was born, and she was in fucking reign for 25 years at that point.
Oh,
In 77. So what's 77 make minus 25? 52.
no. So King Albert died in 1952.
There you go, 52.
Yeah.
So she's been in reign since, and that's going to be a very, very long time before anyone has a fucking reign like that.
Oh,
Even if Charles comes into it, he will be.
This is what I wanted to talk about, is the fact that, you know, so you haven't seen any of The Crown, right?
No, like the first episode.
I watched The Crown, and I feel like I'm a little bit up to, like, I feel like I've been following the royals a little bit. I feel like it's a little bit farts and free sometimes. Like, I could never be a royal. Imagine if I was born into the royal family. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine me?
Yeah, but
royal?
I think though, if you were
My
born
dad's
into the royals,
shaped.
you would also play the game properly. I think.
Yeah.
You would be like, shots.
But imagine
You'd
if
be like,
imagine
shots, anybody?
Sweden one, the one who you know, the Aussie one that met in the Tasmanian bar. Imagine if I was that one.
Yeah. Shots.
Anyway.
Anyone. What was her
So
name? The Danish one. Yeah.
Mary.
Yeah.
So anyway, I watched the first season. I'm up to maybe the second season. It has gotten a little bit dry for me, and so I really, really want to go back to it. But I never knew that the reason that Queen Elizabeth had the throne is because her dad's brother abdicated. Did you know this? So what happened was, in 1936, Prince Albert was in line for the front. So he was a king. He was a king for the first year, right? So Prince Albert is brother to... Oh, hang on, sorry, no. Prince Edward. Prince Edward is brother to Prince Albert, which is the king. The king before Queen Elizabeth took over. So what happened was, Prince Edward, in 1936, abdicated the throne. He was only a king for about a year, and he fell in love with a woman who was divorced. In 1936, that was a complete fucking...
Not a good thing, yeah.
Right? And then he refused to give her up, and they said to him, you have to give her up. You cannot fucking be with her. You can't even be seen with her in public because you're the king, right? And he said, fuck you guys, I'm going to marry her. And they said, well, you can't be fucking king of England, right? So he said, well, fuck this, I'm going to...
Henry VIII could, so should I.
Yeah, but it was very different then because the politics played a massive part of it.
Big time.
English politics were very involved, so they were all together.
And it was all world ruly shit, yeah.
Yeah.
Colonization.
100%. So he said, well, fuck it, I'm not going to be the king anymore. And they were like, how dare you? Who would ever, never want to be the king of England? Like, this is the biggest honour onto you. Like, how dare you revoke, being a king, you fucking dummy. Yeah. So he did, and that meant that it fell to his brother, Prince Albert, and then he was the York one, the Prince of York.
Grand Old Duke of York.
Hang on, I made some notes. Anyway, so it was Prince Albert, right? So he was, I'm pretty sure he was the Duke of York, which was Queen Elizabeth's dad. So the first season of The Crown is her being actually quite pissed off about the fact that she had to be queen because her uncle abdicated to her father, and her father was king for...
So she never had it in her sights. It was never meant to be her. It was
never meant, exactly. Yeah. Okay, but then Prince Edward never had any kids. with his missus, his divorced missus. So she probably would have eventually been queen anyway because it was in their line. So Prince Albert, her dad, he was king for, I don't know, 20 or 30 years. But he died of cancer, and he was a massive smoker, massive chain smoker. And they cut it all out. They lied to him about the fact he was dying because they didn't want to cause fucking
chaos
and stuff. And he was super sick, and he thought he was better. They told him he was well, but he fucking wasn't. He was going to die very quickly. And then that's what happened to Queen Elizabeth. So she was like, when she was the one who had to take over the throne, she was like, well, I'm living my fucking life.
How old was she when she took it over? Do you know?
Oh, look, I think, hang on, I'm going to have to look it up. Please ask a question, I didn't know the difference. But I tell you what, so if King Edward, I made notes about this, if it would have been 20 years later, so right, if she had not, so say for example, the original king never abdicated, and then her dad never had to be king, if he never had kids, which he didn't, but he might have felt a bit more pressure to have kids if he was king for such a long time.
Right, to have an heir, yeah.
But if he didn't, Queen Elizabeth still would have ended up being the queen, right? Because he didn't have any heirs, and her dad died before he died, so it would have passed to her eventually.
It was going that way anyway.
It would have been, so he died 20 years after her dad died, which is when she became the queen. So she would have had another 20 years. She would have been able to let her kids grow up a little bit and spend a bit more time with them. But that's not what happened. She had to leave the kids when they were very little and be like, fuck you kids, I'm sorry.
Mama's queen.
My dad died because she wasn't expecting, she was very, very close with her dad. She wasn't expecting her dad to die because they kept lying to her dad and saying, he's cool. He's had an operation. He's cool, man. He's not going to die. He's got no cancer. What's cancer anyway? No one really believes in cancer.
It's just a star sign. It's fine.
He's the King of England. Anyone can fix him.
He's not going to get COVID.
He's fine. Chain smoking in the hospital, doing these ones in the hospital the whole time. And they're like, it's cool. He's the king. He can do whatever he wants. Okay, so she started, coronation was 1953.
Her coronation.
Yeah, Queen Elizabeth was 1953. So she also gave them an additional year if you watch the show. So she should have been coronated the year before, but she said, I'll give you another year because they thought she wasn't ready. And she said, fine, fuck you. I'll just wait. She was a fucking boss, mate. And then do you know who I've had a lot of respect for after watching it is what was the Prime Minister at the time?
Winston Churchill.
Yes.
Yeah, man. We will fight them on the beaches.
He's portrayed
we will fight them on the shores.
Quite well in the series.
What is he like? The bulldog? Yeah.
But he's very, very old, and then he has this thing where he's and it appears non-sexual, whether it was sexual or not. In the show, it's not perceived as. But he has this young secretary that really is infatuated with him, and they have like this little bit of a friendship. And then the fog, and I can't think of the year. It would have been when the Queen was first, so it must have been in the early 1950s when the Queen was first. I don't even think she was actually coronated then. And it was all the whatever factories that they had going at the time caused all this fog, but then there was like humidity, and it caused all this drama, and it lasted for like 2 weeks nearly. And then his secretary at the time, who he absolutely adored, she ran out into the street and got hit by a taxi and then got killed. And he was the one who was called because his card was on it, and he was called to identify the body, and he was like there like sobbing because there was like a difference in age by like at least 40 years, and she was just like this really cool chick that he just had a little bit of a taking to, and she died. And then he was just sobbing over it and they were all saying to him that he should have done more to stop the fog earlier, if he'd shut the factories down.
But that's what they used to say. In London, it was thicker than pea soup and all that shit. When you'd walk through, they'd say you couldn't see anything until someone's fucking light of a cigarette or something like that was walking towards you.
But back then, all the people that were working in the factories because if they had stopped it, they'd all be homeless and fucking foodless. Like their children would kind of get fed for all that time, and it was thousands. Like it was a smaller community then. So he was trying to find the balance, and he kept saying, "Oh, it'll stop. The smog will stop." But it was just an unusually weather conditions that meant that England was just in this smog for like 2 weeks, and it's a really good show, but it is very historical, so it's not something that you can binge watch.
It's something you have to actually watch it and give your attention to.
Yeah, but also you just need like an episode here and there, and I haven't watched it in about 6 months, so I need to go back to it because I was getting to some really good shit when it happened.
Thanks for listening to Stupid Bitches Say What, and our take on the month that was.
Don't forget, if you like what you hear, tell your mates and follow our socials and YouTube channel, Stupid B Say What.
Also, we'd love to hear from you. So email us at stupidbsaywhat@gmail.com for feedback, topic suggestions, or just general chit-chat. Join us next week as we host our very first Taboo Tuesday.
Woohoo! Make sure you submit your suggestions if you want them discussed, and make sure to tune into our special Christmas episode.
Yay!
Something that will become an annual staple, you stupid bitches. It will also include our loved ones.
Our significant others.
Stupid bitches.
So excited about the Christmas one. You stupid bitches.
Too. Okay, if you leave me again, I'm going to fucking fly there and punch you in the face.
Did you not like that with Vinny?
I did. I love him, but we need to finish this fucking podcast.
We do need to finish this. You're right.
Yeah, that stupid bitch. He's a stupid bitch. What a stupid bitch. That's stupid.